Some changes in life do not arrive with thunder, and they do not knock loudly at your door. They come quietly, like an unfamiliar breeze passing through a familiar home. And for Libra, the first sign of this inner shift does not come from the outside world, not from distant plans or grand visions, but from the very space you return to every single day. You may have already felt it, a vague sensation when you step inside your home. A familiar corner suddenly feels different. An old object makes you pause longer than usual. A small family conversation, seemingly insignificant, yet it stirs something deep in your chest. Or maybe it is just a passing thought about rearranging, changing, clearing out, repairing, or finally making a decision connected to where you live. Nothing big enough to name, yet not small enough to ignore. A home is not only a place that shelters you from rain and sun. For Libra, it holds the rhythm of an entire chapter of life. Every wall has heard your silence. Every room has witnessed your moments of weighing, of yielding, of enduring, and then quietly comforting yourself with the words, "It's okay." That is why when something begins to shift in this space, it is never accidental. What you are experiencing may seem very ordinary. A change in family routines, a matter involving paperwork, property, or a choice you have postponed for a long time that can no longer be avoided. But beneath that calm surface is a very clear signal. Life is gently placing a hand on your shoulder and whispering, "It is time. Time to look back. Time to ask yourself what truly needs to stay and what you have been carrying out of habit alone." Your home is reflecting you. The clutter on the outside often walks hand in hand with unnamed emotions on the inside. And when a small change appears, it is like a narrow crack of light, thin, yet enough for brightness to begin seeping in. Libra is used to keeping the peace, to maintaining balance for everyone else. But there are cycles when the universe no longer asks if you are ready. It gently creates a situation that invites you to finally listen to yourself. This unexpected event does not come to disrupt your life. It comes to remind you that you deserve a stronger foundation, a living space that reflects who you are now, not who you were years ago. If you have felt yourself slowing down lately, if you often find yourself standing still in your home, lost in quiet thoughts, if you sense a gentle pull toward change, without knowing where to begin, that is the sign. Not a sign of loss, but a sign of rebirth, knocking in the softest way possible. And when you allow yourself to look more closely at these subtle movements, when you stop brushing aside delicate emotions, you begin to realize that your living space has been whispering many things to you. Some old energies are ready to be closed. Some doors are ready to be opened. And some things are quietly preparing to enter your life in ways very different from what you once imagined. All you need is to stay with this feeling a little longer. Listen a little deeper. Because when your space begins to change, the current within you is quietly shifting as well. And from there, greater movements in life will naturally find their way to you. Because a home is never just four still walls. It lives with you. It absorbs the things you never say out loud, the moments you choose silence over expression, the emotions you tuck away to keep the peace for everyone else. There are long evenings when you sit in a familiar room, warm light spilling across the walls, everything still in its place. Yet, you are no longer the same person you once were. Your home has witnessed all of it, and now it is the one speaking back to you. This disruption did not arrive to confuse you. It comes like a very real, very gentle touch, asking you to pause, to look around, and to notice the things that have been there far too long without ever truly being touched. It might be a corner filled with old belongings, a room whose door is rarely opened, a family relationship you have carefully avoided. Behind polite distance and familiar courtesy, all of it seems harmless on the surface, yet each piece carries the weight of years of energy left unresolved. When things begin to shift, even slightly, that is when invisible dust starts to fall. Not just dust on furniture, but dust made of memories, of emotions that were never given a name. Old sadness can rise without warning. Family stories you thought were finished surface again. In the most ordinary conversations, you are not searching for them, yet they appear on their own, as if now is finally the moment. They need to be seen, fully and honestly. Libra is used to keeping everything steady. But deep down, you are also deeply sensitive to energy. You can feel when a space grows heavy, when the air no longer feels clear. This event is like a quiet invitation, an invitation to slow down, to face what has been carefully stored away, not to blame, not to judge, but to understand and to let go. There may be moments that feel uncomfortable. Old emotions rush back. Questions arise about responsibility, about the role you have carried within your family, about how much you have sacrificed to keep everything calm. Yet within those moments, something very important is happening. Energy that has been locked away for years is finally given room to breathe. What was once suppressed is now allowed to exist, even if only in silence. And when you allow yourself to clear things out, not just with your hands, but with honesty toward yourself, the space around you begins to change. The air feels lighter. Your breathing becomes deeper. Your home starts to reflect a new version of you, more grounded, more real, no longer forcing yourself to hold everything together for everyone else. From this quiet rearranging, a sense of peace begins to form. Not loud, not dramatic, just a gentle calm, enough for you to realize that when old weight is finally set down, there is always room for something better to arrive, naturally and right on time. And from that fragile sense of calm, you begin to notice something quietly fascinating. As the space around you grows lighter, your thoughts begin to clear as well. You are no longer as tense as before, no longer stretched thin by overlapping worries. Life still looks familiar on the outside, but the way you show up inside it has changed. And that is when a new movement begins to take shape. Quiet, yet undeniably real. For Libra, money has never been just numbers. It has always been tied to safety, to balance, to the simple ability to breathe out without fearing tomorrow. When your home is rearranged, when invisible burdens are finally set down, energy that once felt stuck begins to find a new path forward. Not through loud opportunities, but through very human, very unexpected moments. It might be a phone call you never anticipated, a forgotten payment suddenly brought back into conversation, support from family arriving, just when you no longer wanted to ask, or an old connection, someone from a distant chapter of your life, returning with an offer, an opening, a door you never imagined would appear. You do not have to chase these things. They come to you on their own, as if they have been waiting. For the moment, you became light enough to receive them. What is different now is how you respond. There is no panic, no suspicion. Instead of asking, "Why me?" or "How long will this last?" you receive it with a calm you did not have before. Because deep inside, you understand this is not random luck. It is the result of your willingness to face what was heavy, to clear what no longer belonged, to release what no longer matched. The person you have become. Money begins to move, not only outside of you, but within the way you value yourself. You realize you do not need to over-sacrifice to feel safe. You do not need to strain to deserve abundance. When you stand firmly in your own living space, the outer world responds in very tangible ways. The amount may not be large, but it arrives at exactly the right time. When you need room to breathe, when a new decision must be made, when your view of the future begins to shift. And in that moment, you understand something important. Abundance does not always arrive like a crashing wave. Sometimes it comes like warm water, flowing steadily, quietly nourishing, changes that are meant to last. As the flow of money begins to move, your heart feels less crowded. The lingering weight of responsibility, of carrying everything for everyone, softens. You allow yourself to consider new choices, different paths, possibilities you once set aside, out of fear of disrupting a fragile balance. And within this gentle movement, you begin to understand that when your living space is healed, life naturally finds its way back into balance. What comes to you now is not only material support, but a quiet reminder that you are on the right path, that the subtle changes you chose are opening a more sustainable road ahead, one that will carry you forward with steadiness and with trust into the days to come. And when you realize that the flow of money has begun to move, a very unfamiliar feeling rises at the same time. It is not loud excitement, not the sudden joy of receiving an unexpected gift. It feels more like finally exhaling, after holding your breath for far too long. A deeply human feeling, quiet, real, as if life has finally lifted an invisible weight you have been carrying on your shoulders for years. What comes to you now does not arrive all at once. It does not turn everything upside down overnight, but it comes at the exact moment you need it most. When pressure has been silently building, close to its limit. When you begin to wonder whether you still have the strength to keep everything balanced. That support, whether large or small, carries a very clear message. You no longer have to hold everything alone. Libra is used to balancing the needs of others, often forgetting to balance their own. You carry responsibility quietly. You place your needs last. And because of that, when help appears, you do not rush to spend. You do not chase temporary desires. Instead, you slow down. You reflect. You weigh your choices carefully. You begin to look at life through a different lens, more practical, yet also far gentler with yourself. This form of abundance feels like a cushion. It does not promise instant wealth, but it creates space. Space to resolve something long delayed. Space to make a decision you once feared because safety felt uncertain. Space to think beyond survival and towards something lasting. And that ability to choose, that freedom to pause and decide, is the greatest gift of all. In these quiet moments, you begin to understand something profound. Abundance does not always mean more. Sometimes it means less. Less worry, less tension, less pressure to prove that you are always fine. As financial strain softens, your mind gains room to breathe. You begin listening to what you truly want. How do you want to live? What do you want to give your time to? What values do you want to build? For the years ahead, a subtle shift takes place. You no longer make decisions from fear of lack. You begin making choices from clarity and self-respect. You realize that stability does not mean standing still. It means having a foundation strong enough to move forward without losing yourself. And every small decision you make now quietly shapes a different way of living. Slower, more sustainable, more honest. As night falls, inside a space that has been gently rearranged, you can feel it clearly. A soft sense of reassurance spreads, not because you have everything, but because you know you are moving in the right direction. You understand that what has arrived is not random reward, but life responding to the quiet changes you had the courage to make. And when you allow yourself to stay with this feeling, when you resist rushing back into the old, tense rhythm of living, something very important begins to reveal itself. This sense of abundance is not only here to help you survive a difficult chapter, it is guiding you toward a more stable way of living from within, a place where you no longer have to strain to keep everything balanced because you have become the strongest point of support in your own life. And as you begin to stand more firmly in that sense of stability, something else quietly takes place. So subtle that if you are not fully present, you might miss it. An invisible thread within your family, within your home, within your own heart is gently being untied. Not through confrontation, not through raised voices, but through understanding that arrives late, yet somehow right on time. There are family stories that stretch on for years, so long that you once believed they were permanent parts of your life, a responsibility you took on without question, a role you accepted, even though no one ever asked you to carry it. You told yourself that enduring a little more was fine, that keeping the peace mattered more than your own feelings. And over time, that sacrifice became routine, then became a burden you no longer knew how to name. Now, as the current has shifted, as you are no longer pulled forward by sheer survival pressure, you begin to see familiar relationships through different eyes. There is no blame, no urge to fix or repair, only clarity. You see that some things have fulfilled their purpose. Some roles have been played long enough, and some silent promises have already been honored fully, even if no one ever acknowledged them. This closing does not feel like a cold ending. It feels more like a quiet afternoon when the light softens and you know it is time to close the door and rest. It may be a final conversation within yourself, where you allow yourself to stop carrying other people's emotions. It may be a very small decision, yet one strong enough to break old patterns. Or simply, you stop trying to please everyone and accept that true balance sometimes requires just enough distance. In that moment, you may feel sadness, not sharp sorrow, but a gentle sadness, woven with memory, because closing an old cycle also means saying goodbye to a version of yourself, the one who always tried, the one who endured quietly, the one who placed themselves last. And alongside that sadness, there is a very real sense of relief, as if you have finally set down a heavy suitcase you have been dragging for many years. Your home feels it too. The atmosphere shifts. Conversations become shorter, but more honest. You no longer need to guess how to respond to fit the role. You simply get to be yourself, grounded, calm, shaped by years of hurt and growth. And that change, even without words, creates healthy boundaries. It allows relationships to return to their natural place. Libra often fears endings because you value harmony and hate causing pain. But some endings do not hurt anyone. They simply return things to where they truly belong. When you allow an old cycle to close, you are not abandoning anyone. You are only stopping the abandonment of yourself. And that is an act of courage, deeply human, and absolutely necessary for moving forward without carrying weight that no longer belongs to you. As this closing unfolds, quietly, gently, you begin to feel a new kind of space opening. Not the emptiness of loss, but the openness of freedom. A space wide enough to breathe more deeply, to live more truthfully, and to prepare for what lies ahead with a heart that has finally been released. And from that quiet space, we've made dub, and a new feeling slowly begins to appear. Each time you come home, not a burst of joy, not an obvious sense of excitement, just a very real lightness, like stepping into a spacious room. After spending too long in a confined place, you begin to notice that you no longer tense up. When you open the door, you no longer carry that low, lingering fear that something heavy will be waiting for you inside. Your home now greets you with a gentle silence, not a cold silence, but a pause, soft enough for you to hear your own breathing again. There are evenings when you sit down without needing to do much of anything, simply being there and feeling that it is enough. Corners of the house that once drained you now feel familiar in a new way. The light falls more softly. The air itself seems to slow down, allowing your shoulders, held tight for so many years, to finally relax. You begin to understand that your home no longer reflects old pressures. It no longer reminds you of unfinished responsibilities, of roles you were forced to carry, or of stories that once weighed heavily on your heart. Instead, it becomes a place of recovery, a place where you can sit with yourself without explanation, a place where you are allowed to be tired, allowed to be quiet, allowed to not be okay without disappointing anyone. There is something deeply meaningful in this shift. When your living space feels safe, your inner world begins to heal in the most natural way. You sleep more deeply. You think less. Thoughts that once circled endlessly begin to settle, making room for a fragile yet steady sense of trust. You no longer have to brace yourself. Before coming home, you simply come back. Your home now feels like an old friend, one who asks very little, who does not push or demand, who simply stays. It holds you steady, while the outside world continues to shift and change. It offers you a quiet anchor so that each morning you can step out with a stronger sense of grounding, and you begin to realize that strength does not come from controlling everything. It comes from knowing you always have a place to return to and to restore your energy. There are days when you sit by the window, watching the light change with the hours, and feel a gratitude that is difficult to put into words. Gratitude for facing what was hard. Gratitude for letting go. Gratitude for not running away when things became heavy. Your home, in its own quiet way, has walked with you through a season of growth without ever needing to announce it. And within this calm, you begin to nurture what was once neglected: creativity, small joys, dreams you once believed were unrealistic. When pressure no longer erodes you, your life force slowly returns. You feel drawn to care for this space again, not to prove anything, but because you understand. This is what nourishes you. Your home is no longer a place that holds worry. It becomes a place that restores. Each time you close the door behind you, it is no longer an act of escaping the world, but a healthy way to recover before moving forward again. And from this steady foundation, a gentle sense of readiness begins to form, as if you are finally full enough inside to welcome the next changes in your life with calm and with trust deeper than ever before. And as you stand more firmly in that place of support, something becomes clear, even without needing to be named. Something inside you has changed. Not because the outside world has shifted dramatically, but because your inner foundation has been rearranged into a new order. An order no longer built on endurance, but on self-understanding and deep respect. for your own real boundaries, you begin to notice that the way you think has shifted. You no longer react out of old habits. You no longer rush to please. You no longer force yourself to keep everything balanced at all costs. Instead, you pause. You ask yourself first, does this truly fit me? Does this nourish me? And that single change alone opens a very different path forward. The decisions you make now move at a new rhythm, slower but steadier, with less confusion, with far less regret. You no longer choose from fear of losing. You choose from a sense of enough, quietly cultivated each day, within your own living space. You understand now that stability does not mean standing still. It means knowing where you are going and why you continue to move forward. Your relationship with money reflects this shift as well. You begin using it with greater awareness, no longer spending to soothe emotions, no longer driven by constant fear of keeping everything safe at any price. You think longer term, more sustainably, and that clarity continues to attract opportunities and financial flow built on trust, not pressure. Your way of living changes too. You stop chasing old standards that once drained you. You allow yourself to live at your own pace. You give time to what holds real value, to relationships that do not require you to trade away yourself. Life is no longer a constant effort to maintain balance. It becomes a harmonious movement where you give and are also deeply nourished. What matters most is that none of these changes began with a dramatic decision out in the world. They began at home. They began when you faced what was old, when you allowed cycles that no longer fit to gently close, when you created a space safe enough for your own healing. And from that very real, very human foundation, your destiny quietly found a new direction. When you look back, you may realize there was no loud turning point, only many small choices made with awareness. Yet those choices led you to a version of yourself that is steadier, freer, and more at peace. A Libra who no longer lives to balance everything for everyone, but lives in true balance within themselves. And if you are listening to this story at a very personal moment in your life, trust this. Change does not need to begin somewhere far away. It can begin right where you are, in the space you live in, and the way you treat yourself each day. When the foundation is nurtured deeply enough, the road ahead will slowly open, not rushed, not forced, but clear. You do not need to become someone else. You only need to keep walking with the quiet trust that everything is changing at the root in the best possible way, meant for you.